Oh, hey there guys, this is TheBassSinger. I do realize it's been a while since the last compare and contrast episode, but I've been playing this game for the past 5 months and it's gotten really addicting and I just can't stop playing it. But I also recognize how dangerously addicting this game could be, so I'm just gonna have to turn it off for now and really work on the next compare and contrast episode. It has been quite a while, so yeah, let's just get on to that. Alright, I just need to find my yellow shirt and then we could get rolling. Huh, man, this room is a dirty mess. I'm gonna have to clean it up soon. Okay, huh. Is there anything yellow? Oh, wait. Oh, those are pants. God damn it. Okay. Is this on? Nope, there's a little bit of white there. I don't think I could. Oh, what's that over? Nope, that's a Pikachu. Huh. I lost my yellow shirt. So out of all the Resident Evil games, 2 and 3 are the ones I'm least familiar with. I did play 1 when it was released on the DS, I played 4 when it was released on the Wii, I borrowed a copy of Resident Evil 5 from my good friend Mello, and since the game has cooperative play, we were able to play together as well. I definitely recommend watching our Let's Play of the game. It was a lot of fun recording that. I also own like 5 copies of the game too. I think I might have a problem. RE6 was certainly a mixed bag for me. I actually had a lot of fun with the game, but I also admit that it lost its horror roots. That is, until Resident Evil 7 came out and blew the creep factor back to maximum. Since the remake releases this year, I figure it'll be a good chance for me to check out the original as well, and see how it compares to the remake. Now, storyline-wise, there's not really much of a difference, aside from minor key elements. I will showcase that for the sake of this review, though. In terms of cutscenes, I will showcase the remake footage, since graphically it does look superior. No offense to the original PS1 graphics, though. I'm pretty sure it was good at its time. Anyways, without further ado, this is Resident Evil 2, the original, versus Resident Evil 2, the remake. Alright, well, before we actually begin, I have to mention that this game has 2 story modes, one for Leon Kennedy and one for Claire Redfield. You do have the choice of picking either one first, but to get the full story, I'm going to be playing through both stories. For the sake of this comparison, I will be explaining the remake story and cover Claire's story first, and then Leon's. There are some minor differences between the original story and the remakes, but for the most part, they're not that spectacular. There's also the Ghost Survivor missions as well, which was included on the DualShock version of the original Resident Evil 2 disc, and as free DLC for the remake version. Now, the side missions do expand on the story a little bit, but to my knowledge, they're not canon. So I won't be discussing these too much, and for the record, I didn't even finish the final story. If you start playing through Claire's route, you start off at a gas station. As we enter, one of the employees seems to be injured, so we investigate. A zombie-infected monster seems to have eaten one of its employees, so we need to get out of there as soon as possible. All the while, a bunch of zombies chase after us. We are rescued by a police recruit, Leon Kennedy, who is on his first day of the job. What a day. We drive to the police department, however we got separated after an explosion from a gas driver. Luckily, both of them survive, but they have to split up to get to the police station. Claire made it back as she investigates the place. Once we get past the east hallway, we see one of the police officers yelling at us to rescue him, but unfortunately it's too late. We obtain his notebook and escape from the first floor, only to be grabbed by an upcoming enemy. Luckily, one of the surviving police officers named Marvin saves us, though it seems as though he's very injured in his abdomen. Looking into the dying police officer's notebook, we need to find 3 medallions to escape to an underground facility that is hidden underneath the station. On our way, we stumble across a helicopter crash and find Leon outside the gateway of the police station. But because of the upcoming explosion, that lures the zombies nearby, so the 2 protagonists are split up again. We managed to find the 3 medallions, but because Marvin is too deep within the virus, he cannot join us in our escape, so we go through it all alone. As we travel down, we notice a disgruntled, disfigured man above us. As we continue on, we see a little girl, only to be interrupted by a sad, disfigured man. We deal with him and return back to the little girl, whose name is Sherry Birkins. As we continue into the parking lot, an overweight-looking man named Chief Irons, who is the leader of the Raccoon Police Department, forces Sherry to come with him as we are held at gunpoint. With no way to chase him, we need to find a parking ID to continue. So we continue on to the police station to find an old man's office. We find the ID, but we need 2 electronic parts in order to access it. One is located underground next to the parking lot, and another on top of a bell tower. So we continue forth and...
Holy shit, what is that thing?
That, my fellow viewers, is Mr. X, a biogenetic experiment by Umbrella bent on destroying anything and anyone in Umbrella's way. Anyways, we get the electronic parts and obtain the parking ID. Afterwards, we get a surprising phone call from Chief Irons himself. He tells us to give him the pendant that was originally in Sherry's possession by meeting him in an abandoned orphanage. Otherwise, he'll do something... evil, I think. It's not really explained that much. But while he's on his evil deed, Sherry finds a way to escape the orphanage. She manages to find a key to the exit, but is caught by Irons himself. In a desperate attempt to escape, Sherry throws some sort of toxin into Irons, disfiguring his face. While still inside the orphanage, Sherry has to stealth her way out, and she manages to do so, only to be locked by a second lock. Escaping back to his office, we are then shown Claire's perspective as she heads to the orphanage. So she goes to the parking lot and uses the parking ID, which the door exit slowly grates upwards. Ah, shit! She makes it to the orphanage after a giant concussion. But it seems as though no one is there aside from Chief Irons in his mutated form. We locate a secret passageway inside his office and locate Sherry, only to be chased down by Mr. X. The two continue to run into an elevator shaft, but Mr. X manages to catch up and entrap them. However, he is then killed by the disgruntled man from the first boss fight, and Sherry announces that that man is her father, William Birkins. The elevator then tramples downwards as William attacks the shaft. Both of us survive, somehow, and Sherry attempts to wake us up, but then runs away after being chased by her father. A female scientist then awakes us and gathers notes on William and his rapid growth as a zombie. Her name is Annette, and it is revealed that she is Sherry's mother, who seems more focused on her work more than her own daughter. So Claire decides to take matters into her own hands and find Sherry herself. She eventually does so, but is beyond a locked door that requires 6 chess pieces to open. After obtaining them, we then head down to her location only to be cornered by William again. We defeat him using a big gigantic crate, and he falls down to his doom. I totally don't think we're ever gonna see him again. Totally. We rescue Sherry, but it seems as though she's infected by the virus as well. Annette witnesses a tragedy and says that there's nothing we can do to save her. Claire, having none of that, is still dedicated enough to find a cure for her, so Annette obliges and tells her to meet her in the lab where it's possible to extract a virus out of her. There just so happens to be an antiviral agent located somewhere in the West Wing, so that's our next objective. After trading more ID passes, by exploring the entirety of the lab, we manage to locate it, only to be faced against William for a third time, surprise. Annette attempts to stop him by freezing him temporarily. A flashback shows that William created the zombie infection known as the G virus and infected himself after a military operatives surround him in an attempt to steal the virus. While he was gunned down, the virus was actually strong enough for him to survive and mutate into this creature form and kill off the remaining agents, while at the same time the virus itself seems to spread after several rats ingest them, possibly infecting the rest of Raccoon City as well. After more arguments with Annette and her bad parenting, William frees himself and knocks Annette, injuring her severely. We fight him for a third time and he's finally dead. Maybe. We give the antiviral agent to Annette as she slowly makes her way back to her daughter. Heading back to Sherry's location, it seems as though she is cured, but the building is about to self-destruct. With Annette's last dying words, she tells us to get Sherry out and save her. So we head down to a conveniently placed transit system as we get in contact with Leon by telling him to get out of the city before breaking up with his communication. As we head out, William is still fucking alive, this persistent little bastard. So we gotta deal with him for the 4th time, and then we finally get rid of him. We escape, and turns out Leon has found his way to the transit as well, and they all live happily ever after.
It's so good to see you.
That is until a last-minute cutscene that shows a foreboding enemy invading the train. What are they going to do with the train? Well, that's where the second run comes in. During Leon's campaign, we start out with Leon and Claire's second encounter after the helicopter crash. From there, the story seems to repeat itself with Leon encountering William again for his first fight, with the only difference being that Sherry is not present. I'm assuming that the repeated happenings that occur in both Leon and Claire's campaign I could possibly chalk down to a separate timeline scenario. Otherwise, if we were to assume that both of their campaigns are happening at the same time, then there are things that don't add up. For example, both of them managed to meet Mr. X for the first time at the same place, also fighting William Birkins for his second and third boss battle. Not only that, but in the middle of Claire's campaign, Mr. X is clearly dead. Yet somehow he's perfectly unscathed during the lab escape sequence in Leon's campaign. Like I said, if you want to say that both of these are happening at the same time, then That's just flat out wrong. At the very least, instead of Sherry and Claire's campaign after our first boss battle, we have an FBI agent named Ada Wong, who's investigating under classified means. Leon, being the arrogant bastard he is, still wants answers and chases after her inside a jail cell. We meet up with one of the prisoners named Ben, who has a grudge against Chief Irons. He plans on making a deal with Leon by helping him out. He'll get a parking ID to get us out of here. But Leon, being the good cop he is, decides against that. After begging countlessly, he is eventually held by the head, which gets crushed, instantly killing him. Ada follows Leon from behind, even though she was the one that went inside the jail cell first. Unfortunately for her, Ben has some information for her investigation, but because he contracted a disease called Dead as Fuck, she has to find another way to gather information, all the while continue to pester us to leave the city. So it's off to find another way to open Ben's cell in order to get the parking ID. How do we do this? By doing the same thing what Claire does and retrieving 2 electronic parts. We managed to get them and open up the cell to gather the parking ID, along with a video recording of Ben's interview with Annette about the G virus and Umbrella's alignment with the orphanage. We attempt to leave the cell only to be bombarded by more zombies and, even worse, Mr. X himself. Leon manages to miraculously escape only to be grabbed by Mr. X at the same way Ben got himself into his trouble. Luckily, thanks to Ada and her SWAT truck, she goes full throttle into the beast and crashes him onto a wall, once again saving Leon for the second time. But the tyrant is still alive and he moves the truck to free himself. Fortunately for us, there's a gas leakage that happens to explode upon Mr. X's impact, after Ada ignites her C4. We escape the police station and finally hear out Ada's mission as she infiltrates the pharmaceutical company known as Umbrella, and their illegal research on the biohazard, a genetic mutation that turns anyone who consumes said product into zombies. As we progress, the roads are still under construction, so we need to go through a gun shop in order to pass by. On our way through, we are confronted with the paranoid owner and what appears to be his infected daughter. He asks us politely to leave as the gun over embraces his daughter and locks both of them inside a house. We're off towards the sewers where we are confronted by for about 20 seconds as a simple explosion annihilates the creature. We encounter Annette, only for her to escape. Attempting to chase her down, we get shot down by her after saving Ada. As Leon rests, we get to control Ada, and as we do, we are in pursuit of the mad scientist. Eventually, we are trapped at an incinerator after finding a wrist key, but we manage to escape, only to be caught by another trap. Back to Leon, he explores around the sewers and found Ada's unconscious body, and in order to set her free, we need to find 6 chess pieces and unlock the door again. Oh boy. And then William appears again, oh boy. But we eventually save Ada, and rather than being infected like Sherry, she just has a sprained ankle. We come across a skylift, and the objective of our mission is to find the antiviral agent for Ada to recover. Also, yeah, many shippers shit their pants after seeing that. We finally arrive at the lab, and after some exploration, we finally found the antiviral agent and come across Annette again. She gets pimp slapped by William, and we dispose of him for a 3rd time. Annette also exclaims to us that Ada should not be trusted as she doesn't seem to appear as Leon thought she would be. This mindset leads Leon to question Ada's motives. After discovering the truth, she finally confesses her espionage as it appears that she has some ulterior motives behind obtaining the antiviral agent. Unfortunately for her, she gets shot by Annette as in her final trigger pull, she dies. Leon tries to rescue her, but unfortunately loses his grip as Ada plummets to her death, never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. The self-destruction sequence is active, and Mr. X is behind us, so we need to fight him as our last encounter. Out of luck, a random rocket launcher manages to appear in the battlefield by sheer coincidence. Oh hey, Ada's still alive, what a shocker. Now, how she manages to survive an 80 feet fall is beyond my comprehension. Maybe her bone structure is just made out of titanium, like Claire and Sherry. We get onto the train that just so happens to board Claire and Sherry as they live happily ever after. Oh wait, we still got one more boss battle to encounter. Only then do we finally escape unscathed as the 3 live happily ever after. Until the inevitable sequels. Alright, I realize that's a lot to unpack, but overall, the story is pretty basic. There's really not much to analyze. It's straightforward from point A to point B, and it flows seamlessly. The repeated story elements when playing both games can be mildly repetitive, but really, that's my only downside. I think the way the story is portrayed can be entertaining in a popcorn cheese sort of way. The character's acting is not so great, but nothing really offensive or terrible. In a way, some of the bad acting can be pretty charming as it tries to mimic the old style of the original Resident Evil 2. albeit not cranked to 11 in terms of hamminess. Oh yeah, I should probably look into the original too, huh? I'll make this brief as to not repeat a whole lot. In terms of differences, the remake manages to make certain side characters a lot more dynamic. The gun shop owner, Marvin, the antagonist scientist, Annette, I feel they do a lot more justice in the remake. You want to know what the gun shop owner was like in the original? He gives you a gun, some ammo, and then immediately dies from a horde of zombies. In the remake, they actually give him a backstory with his infected daughter, and made him more bitter. I feel it's a nice addition to make him feel a lot more compassion, and he actually has a purpose rather than just be zombie bait. They also made Annette more of a sympathetic villain. Well, more so in Claire's story than Leon's. While at first she doesn't seem to really care about her daughter, she eventually grows to care about her, and in the end, she's the reason why Sherry is still alive. The character dynamic goes more so with the head police force, Chief Irons, although I will say in the original, I think they portrayed him very well too, making a good baseline for tricking the player into thinking Chief Irons is actually a good guy, though the fact that he has a dead body in front of him when we first meet him doesn't really help his cause whatsoever. But nah, in the remake they made him way more eviler. I would have liked it if they made him good from the start and then trick us into thinking he's evil later on, but I think the new direction works fine enough. Now in terms of the main two characters though, I don't really see much of an improvement. The same can kind of be said for Sherry and Ada as well. All four of these characters are mostly protagonists, being the heroes of the story. And I guess personality wise they made Leon a little bit more cocky just to mimic him a little bit of his Resident Evil 4 personality. But otherwise, not much has changed. Some scenes have been altered, removed, or remade in the remake, and overall, I sort of like that change. I do wish there were elements in the original story that they incorporated with the remake, but overall, it expanded the characters a lot more, made the voice acting a lot more better, and fixed some of the original story flaws. Admittedly, there is some charm to the original bad voice acting. It does make things a lot more comedic than it needs to be. But if I want to take the game more seriously, the remake definitely got me more invested. But I digress. What about the gameplay? With any traditional horror game, there's usually two different types of playstyle, the puzzle solving and the combat. Let me start with the combat since it's the main aspect you'll be focusing on for 75% of the game. I'm gonna sound like a complete millennial here, but the original controls feels weird. The game utilizes tank controls and if you know me, I do not like this control scheme. What you do is move in correlation towards where the character is facing, so when you go up on the D-pad, you move forward, whereas modern controls correlate the direction of the movement towards the camera's position. I mean, I guess it works, it's not uncontrollable by any means. You do eventually get used to it. And yes, I do know that I own the DualShock version, which allows me to use the control stick to move as well. The thing is, all it does is function as a second D-pad. There's really no true analog motion when you slightly go forward. The game recognizes digital inputs only. Now, while the controls feels off, I think that if the level design is allocated for the controls, it should be fine. It's alright. This could be due to my conservative playstyle, but I think that the thing that makes this game not as infuriating are the rates of herbs and ammo. They give you a great amount of those items, so you can deal with the upcoming horde of enemies. Like this section where you exit an office, you are bombarded with an exceeding amount of them. I managed to kill them all because I had the right amount of ammo and the herbs to fix up my wounds, but let's just say you don't have any of those. How the hell are you going to escape? You think you can knife them all? That shit's dinky. I would have liked it if most of these corridors that you encounter had a way for you to escape. Not easily, mind you, I think it should be very difficult. Just not impossible. Like the remake, for example. For tight hallways, yeah, it's a little impossible, but it never feels that way. There are times where I was able to avoid them. More so if you kept any grenades, flashbangs, and knives around you to save yourself if you ever get grabbed. Even with bigger areas with a bunch of zombies, I try my best to find a way to avoid confrontation if possible, especially if I had no herbs or ammo left. Now, I say that these items for the most part are all you need, but there are some items you can get to upgrade your equipment, such as crafting materials for ammo or attachments for your weapons. But you also have to take account into your inventory as well, as you do have a finite amount. You're pretty much required to either discard some non-key items or store them all in the chest box for later use. For the remake, you do have some upgrades that enhance your inventory space, and that can be very useful, especially after getting this achievement where you can never use your item box. There was one item that I found somewhat unneeded or useless for the majority of the game. There's 3 colored herbs in total, green, red, and blue. Green is your standard healing items, which can be combined into 1 or 2 more green herbs for more healing combinations. Or you can combine 1 green herb with 1 extra red herb for max healing combination. As for the blue herbs, they just seem to cure poison. and don't even heal your health at all. I say this is mostly useless because, to my knowledge, there's only one enemy that can poison you in each game, and they only appear in the middle section of the game. I only intentionally poisoned myself for footage because the majority of the time, I either had a grenade, a knife, or a flashbang to save myself from these enemies. I did get poisoned occasionally in the original, but there's also these blue herb plants that infinitely grow, so if you do get poisoned, you can just find one of these and instantly cure yourself. Now if you go for the remake, they do have a difficulty section, easy, medium, and hard. Easy mode is there for those who want to enjoy the story, as there's regenerating health, and zombies will kill you a lot more slowly. For most of my playthrough, I played through either medium or hard mode the most. If I had to describe the overall difficulty of the original game, it has to be between the medium and hard. For one, you are required to save the game using ink ribbons, so you do have a limited amount of use. This didn't really affect me too much though. I usually save once every time I see a typewriter, so the game is not really strict when it comes to saving the game. Though if you do want the S+ rank, you have to save a minimum of 3 times, so really conserve those ink ribbons if you can. The same can also be said for the remake as well. I think both of these games handled ink ribbons perfectly. However, I do wish the ink ribbons were available, or at least an option, for the normal difficulty, as the ink ribbons are exclusive to hard difficulties. And let's not forget, I've explained that the game gave you mostly materials to get through the game, but you'll most likely see this screen regardless. Both of these games are hard, more so with the original as well, so you're gonna have to really know how to play the game properly unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty. If not, you're gonna have to learn how to survive and get through the end of the game and deal with the diverse cast of enemies you'll encounter. Enemy variants are pretty big with both of these games. Both do have regular standard civilian zombies, but also include lickers, which will only attack you if you sprint or shoot your weapon. There are zombie dogs too that are fast creatures and very hard to catch up or outrun. Spiders that crawl into the ceiling and walls, so you have to make sure to aim properly. Strangely enough though, these only appear in the original and not the remake. I feel as though this is a missed opportunity though. I kinda wish they appeared in the remake. These plant enemies, where in the original you can only kill them using fire, in the remake you have to shoot their balls in order to completely kill them. One thing that's really scary and will put you in a more tense situation is Mr. X himself, as he will chase you down and hunt you until you're dead. You can never be too careful because he's also unkillable as well, and he can explore the entire police station. Well, for the most part. There are some places where you're completely safe, like most of the save rooms or Chief Iron's office, which makes moments like these look very silly. But yeah, this guy's not really that threatening anymore. And of course, the boss battles. These battles will test how much you've learned while avoiding enemies and when to attack them at the right moment. Or you could just be like me and start blasting everything you got at them. The original boss battles are kind of a joke. I'm sure there's a way to avoid them and shoot back, but for the most part, all I did was just tank myself with herbs and shoot the ever-living blast out of them. It's not really all that hard if you manage to save up all your ammo and herbs. Whereas with the remake, most of the boss battles are actually designed with multiple phases, so you can't really spam your weapon. You have to actually learn how to properly avoid them. Although there was this first encounter with William Birkins where it's actually possible to knife him to death without getting hit. It's sort of dumb. Both of these games not only include Leon and Claire as playable characters, but you get to also play Ada and Sherry as well. For the original, they're sort of done quickly. I feel as though the remake handled these two way better, with Ada giving you this thingamablaster that overrides any electrical output and overclocks them to cease functioning. And they can make for some tense moments when avoiding Mr. X or escaping from the incinerator. Sherry takes more of the stealth approach, and I think this works very well. It is pretty preset though, so every time you get caught, you know exactly where Chief Irons will go next. Now for the puzzle sections. I mean, they're alright, I guess. I'm not gonna lose much sleep over them. They're there to just pad the game out a little bit, but I wouldn't mind if these games remove them entirely. The thing is, the puzzles are either ridiculously easy, or they just tell you straight up how to solve them. This chess puzzle is kind of unique, I guess. Otherwise, most of the puzzles are just kind of bland for me. And I'd like to stress once again that the puzzles in these games are not bad. I'm just kind of underwhelmed more than anything. So I do like the remake control scheme a lot more since it's something I'm more used to compared to the tank controls of the original. Story-wise, of course, the remake seems to present itself a lot more better as well. Oh yeah, speaking of the presentation... Okay, before we actually start with the presentation, I feel like I need to address some things about this category entirely. First off, if we look at my previous reviews, you've noticed that I've had a broad sense of definition on what I classify as presentation. While most of these have been consistent like graphics and music, some of them kind of blend too close to gameplay or story territory. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been guilty of explaining the voice acting and development for the story section and level design for the gameplay section. There's really not much to describe with just music and graphics. You could kinda just see it for yourself what the game looks like. I'm only merely describing why the game looks good or bad and what I think about the music. By the way, for both of these games, love the way they look. Resident Evil 2 Remakes looks as grotesque and demonic as ever, and I love it. If I had to give a negative, maybe they could have done with some slightly better faces. I kinda don't believe that these are human beings I'm looking at, they look more like Barbie dolls to me. Even so, I think they're mostly trying to make the characters look more attractive rather than realistic, because even for Barbie dolls, they look fine as fuck. Besides, even with the character models, everything else looks gorgeous. The background scenery, designs of certain buildings like the orphanage or the lab, even this beginning cutscene with this truck driver eating a burger. Damn dude, now I'm hungry for some protein. As for the music, I think they made the scary moments more eerie and the dramatic moments a lot more dynamic. If I had to pick a favorite, I do like the way the original sounds with the police station to the save screen. On the remake side, both final boss tracks sound as epic as ever, with Last Judgment being my favorite out of the two. Of course, there's also the credits that conclude the game. The remake title, Saudade, gives this indie rock kind of feel. I do like this track as it shows the triumphant victory of our heroes, but also foreshadows what's to come later in the series. As for the original credit sequence, we've got... I'm probably super biased being a bass player, but goddamn, this bass line literally sells this song for me. I just love it too much. Alright, where was I with the presentation critiques? Oh yeah, as for criticism number 2, different hardware. Obviously, if you compare the two games, the remake hands down looks way better, but that's mostly because I'm playing on the PS4, whereas with the original, I'm playing on the PlayStation 1. Well, technically the PS3 that was backwards compatible with the PS1, but still, that's a pretty ginormous gap. In previous episodes, I tried my best to get the same version for both games, DMC vs Metal Gear on PS3, Dragon Ball FighterZ and Marvel vs Capcom on PC, Call of Duty on the Xbox, and Wii U for some reason. But of course there are times where I couldn't do that, like Sonic Unleashed for PS3 versus Wii, or Super Smash Bros. Melee versus Wii U, a game I'm probably gonna have to update now that Ultimate's out. I explained this issue by stating that I'm judging these games based on the hardware specs they are assigned to and how they differ from other games in the same system. But that's not really comparing both games side by side, is it? That's just merely judging both games without any correlation towards each other. Maybe I can only compare them to each other only if they're running on relatively similar hardware, or maybe I just make the series more of a double review rather than a competition of what game I like more. Speaking of competition, the last critique I have to mention, the point system. It's been pretty inconsistent to the quality of the games I played. Ninja Gaiden 3, for example, well, it's pretty obvious that the remaster is way better, so it gets a simple 3-0, but then we get to the two SpongeBob games I reviewed, which also ended in 3-0, despite me actually enjoying both games. It's unfortunate that I just happen to like one more than the other, and one game exceeded in all the categories compared to the other. I've also given points due to my subjectivity as well, since both games are pretty difficult to pinpoint objectively. So I think that screws my point system a little bit. I do have an idea that I can make a 1 to 10 point scale for each category and maybe even compare them that way so that it's more of a definitive point system. If not, I can just probably get rid of it and decide the winner on my own merit rather than a flawed point system. So yeah, that's all I feel I needed to say. I'm just a little confused and unsure what to call this third section. Final thoughts, miscellaneous, others? Anyways, with those critiques out of the way, let's finally get into the presentation section where I compare the graphics and music. Oh wait, I think I already did that, did I? Well, this has been the first episode of Season 2 of Compare Contrast. I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you excuse me, I still need to destroy the mental instability dungeon. I'm not sure exactly how long this will take, but hopefully it won't take another 5 months.